This week on the Innovators Insider Podcast, we're going to take a look at the latest Onshape release, number 1.139. Our model of the week is Thanksgiving themed. And in user group news, we're going to tell you about a special upcoming meeting. But first, please welcome my co-host, the professor, Michael LaFleche. And Michael's going to introduce our special guest today. Michael, how are you?
I'm wicked good, Richard. I'm really excited to be here and to chat about the latest release. The latest release was amazing, and I can't wait to talk about it. But a lot of people had a lot to do with this, and one of the people that we're talking to here on the podcast is part of the Onshape team, a critical part of our product development process. And I'd love to introduce Jay Tedeschi. And Jay is great storyteller. That's why I thought he would be a great guest for the podcast. A lot of engineering knowledge and background. You look at his set here, that he's sitting in front of, and it just screams, engineer. So Jay, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you. Yeah, it's how long have you been with Onshape now? It hasn't been that long, right?
A little over a year. Started last.
Oh wow, time's flying.
Last year.
Yeah. So you joined during the pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. Joe Dunn finally talked me into it. Like he and Johnny Mac had been. I'd known ever since SolidWorks days. Like way back in like the mid '90s, they tried to get me to come to SolidWorks, and I loved those guys. But at the time, I was working at Autodesk, and our dress code was like shorts, t-shirt, and flip flops. And I went to the Massachusetts office, and they were all walking around in suits, and that was my choice. That made my choice for me. Yeah,
that was.
I just come off of working for the government for 10, 11 years, where I had to wear shirt, tie. That was kind of neat. They didn't care, so I didn't either.
Yeah.
But
yeah, as you can see, the dress code at Onshape's a little more lax, t-shirts and polos.
I just had to wait like 30-something years.
Don't even have to wear pants.
Well, and they don't mind if you grow your hair out.
No, obviously not, or have none at all.
Yeah, it's a good club to be in, to not have to worry about getting a haircut again. But Richard, you get your haircut, quite nicely. I must say you're well coiffed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It's like a rock and roll star.
Yeah, totally. So Jay, what do you do at Onshape?
Product management. So Greg Brown, who's now the head of product management, but when I started, Dave Cochran basically got in touch with me, found out if I was going to be interested. And then after about half an hour of talking to Dave, he was like, "There's someone you need to talk to." And he was like, "You and Greg are like cut from the same cloth." So, and I literally, I spent about an hour on the phone with Greg like a day later. And I got off the phone and went up to talk to my wife, and I said, "This guy's just like me. Like, he's into bikes and like all the same interests. He's like, really into engineering." And so it was a simple choice. But so work on the product management team. So I have responsibility for certain aspects of what's going into Onshape, ECAD, MCAD, Render Studio, as well as some upcoming tools that.
Yeah. Some of these things have been announced earlier, right? Yeah, at that Onshape Live conference we had back in March of earlier this year. It was really. I'm really excited to see these things coming soon. So I'm sure all our listeners are as well, waiting with bated breath. But something that I appreciate about Onshape is we don't release anything until it's ready and it's going to work.
Exactly.
Right? We don't want people to have bad experience, right?
Yep. And then some of just the platform itself, the architecture of the platform offers opportunities that just don't have in other products. I mean, if you look at like Steve Dertine's machine that he has in his office, he has a couple of NVIDIA cards that cost more than that bike. And that is not cheap. And all of that to do, let's say to do a rendering that we're not going to need like hardware requirements like that for, I mean, I literally in a bar, where's my phone? Literally in a pub a couple of weeks ago watching a ball game, and I showed a friend of mine Render Studio like running on my phone. And he was like, and he knows nothing about CAD, nothing about engineering, but he was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah, it doesn't matter because like it doesn't rely on the graphic hardware in the device that you're operating it on. It's all virtualized." That's
yeah, it's totally amazing technology. It's I've been playing with a little bit in our early access that we have here internally, and
native advantages of exciting. Our platform. And it's just going to keep playing out over and over. Like pretty much every new piece of tech that we like drop in can take advantage of that. So like, what did you know anything about Onshape before joining Onshape? No, never I mean, I had seen it and heard of it when I was at Autodesk. We were aware, but no, I had never touched it. And then when it became evident that, I think I will go there, like get to work with Johnny Mack and John Hurstek and Joe Dunn and all these, Dave Cochran, all these people that I'd known for, 20, 30 years, just had never actually worked with them. So I picked it up, and within a week I had done the front end of a Sidewinder air-to-air missile. I did the gimbal seeker head assembly up at the front. I was just blown away. I mean, it's one of those tools in your life when you like sometimes you use a piece of software and it just works the way like it. I don't want to say something. I've always been bothered when they say, Macintosh, Mac OS, or using the Mac mouse. It's very intuitive. No, it isn't. But certain things are. And this was one of those things that it just worked like I expected it to. I didn't. Like everything I needed to learn was like just hit the help file and videos by Cody. I literally when I started, I emailed him and said, "Dude, I learned this product in about a week from the help file and your videos. Like I owe you a beer or 10."
Cody has got the nicest, most relaxing voice. The voice of Onshape. He's done so much for the company, and
agree.
He's a great guy. But yeah, I mean, having that first experience with Onshape, that's kind of how it was with me too. When I first had access to it, way back in the day, this is 2015 now, I quit my job as soon as I started using it. I was like, I can't go back to work anymore. I'm done. I'm ruined. Okay.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a culture shock like that. I remember like, where's the save button? Like there's no save. Like, I don't understand. And then it took me about a couple of days to get used to that. And then that kind of crippled me with using other tools, because a couple of times I was like in the middle of image editing or something, and I just shut my machine lid and walked away and was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. I could do that with Onshape all the time. Like we got to go to another conference room when we're at Seaport. So Greg and I are sitting next to each other. We got to go down to a conference room, just close the lid on my machine, walk down, open it up, boom. Right where
just that simple thing. Like that is just like that. I think you nailed it with like the convenience of a system that's cloud native, right? This is the point of the SaaS program, right? Is like you can just close the lid, open it up again, and you're right where you left off. You didn't have to do the save button. I mean, it's amazing how
it is,
like how easy and convenient. That's like one of our I did a webcast recently and with a customer, and that was their word, right? Onshape is just more convenient, they said. So I'm glad to hear your first week of experience. It was similar to mine, right? I couldn't look back. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just too good. But what was your previous career like before Onshape? You mentioned Autodesk, but maybe some other kind of stories in your career. You worked in the real world.
Yeah.
I always call the CAD world like the fantasy world, right? Where we don't really. I mean, we do work, but I mean, it's like when you're back in the engineering world with deadlines and products being manufactured like for real, right?
Yeah.
That's different. So tell me a little bit more, about your life in that world.
So I grew up in New London, Connecticut, and probably nobody knows this, but New London is was home to the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, because in Groton, Connecticut, which is right across the Thames River, is Electric Boat, General Dynamics Electric Boat Division, which is where they build the submarines. So, I mean, if you grew up here, you grew up in a submarine community, and odds are if you got into mechanical engineering, you ended up working either at Electric Boat or at Naval Undersea Warfare Center. I was I thought attack submarines were the coolest thing I had ever seen when I was, teenager. So just made sense, and got a job working at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center for various contractors, mostly doing Busy One combat system, which was the Block 1, Block 2 was on the Advanced 688. So that would be Flight 2, Flight 3. And then Busy 2, which was on Seawolf. That was the follow-on, the really expensive attack sub. But I did that for like 9-10 years. And I'd always told my wife that, growing up where we did, and being well-read, I was always into, engineering as a whole. So I understood that our military capabilities were most likely matched by those of the Soviets. So I can remember a couple of times as a kid having nightmares where I was like laying in my bed looking up and saw I could see one plane flying over and then this thing coming down, and then boom, a big flash. And then I'd sit up in bed and go, whew. But I mean, we pretty much knew that if there was ever an all-out war, New London would be gone. They'd drop a huge megaton-sized device and it would all be gone. And I remember telling my wife that if it meant that my kids didn't have to grow up with that kind of specter, I would be more than happy to go get a job doing something else. So I did. So I got out of there right before the end of the Cold War, which, by the way, that was a cool period in time. You're a young engineer working during the Reagan years. It was pretty much blank check. So it was pretty inspiring, especially
a lot of cool technology being developed.
Yeah.
Kind of
some of the stuff that we came up with was, we did. I mean, I can talk about it now. Back then, I couldn't say a word. I remember going to see Hunt for Red October. When that movie came out in the 90s, my wife was like, yeah, let's go see it. It's right up your alley. And I remember sitting there and I'm going, how can they talk about this? Like he's talking about the BQQ5, which was the spherical array, or the BQR7. Like he's talking about all of these systems that are on board. And I'm like, I never uttered these words at home, and they're in a movie. I don't understand how we got away with that. Anyway, I left there and went to work for an injection seat crew seating manufacturer, coincidentally named PTC. Stood for Pullman Transportation Company, and we were up in Bantam, Connecticut. And basically they were starting up a 3D CAD, basically a 3D CAD R&D group, and I was the one that they pulled in to get that ball rolling. So I worked there for a few years, and then basically went to a guy who, when I was working for the Navy, he sold us our computer vision software, which, by the way, that's how I met Joe Dunn and John McElney, because we used CADS 4, CADS 4X, CADS 5. Joe Dunn did my CADS 5 training in the old computer vision office. But anyway, the guy who sold us...
I literally live like a mile from that office, too. It's crazy.
You did?
Like, you can drive right by, and CADS 5 was my first big boy CAD system.
That was awesome. What a great tool. I always made the equivalency that it's like Formula One car and a Volkswagen. Like there's easy CAD software and there's hard CAD software. The easy CAD software is a Volkswagen. The hard CAD software is a Formula One car. One is great for just getting around, but if you need to drive 150 miles an hour, one of those tools, it's not going to be easy, but it's basically optimized for doing that kind of work. Anyway. Got an offer, went to work for the reseller who was selling computer vision. And they also happened to have this product there, AutoCAD, which for some reason, like I can remember all the way back to when I was at the lab, Naval Undersea Warfare Center, there's always AutoCAD around. I was like, no, who bought this? back then it was like a joke. It's like, where did this come from? But it was always there. When I worked at that reseller, he had Autodesk software, and I ended up doing a benchmark with Joe Dunn I think it was Amphenol in Pennsylvania. It's either Amphenol or Train. But that's when I met the guys at Autodesk, and they were like, we can't offer you a job because we can't poach from our reseller channel. But if you were to quit, we could probably squeeze you in here. So that was it. I talked to my wife, and we were like, yeah, this seems like a good opportunity. I remember like when somebody described to me, I was like, what the hell is an applications engineer? I had like no idea. But then, it sounded like a cool job. So I did it.
It's totally a cool job.
And I was there for 23 years.
Yeah, it's one of the best jobs. I mean, it's been my job for the last, 25, 30 years, it seems. And, it's like once you're in, it's like you're in. There's no pulling you out of that world again.
I always loved, my dad was an attorney, but he was into engineering, but he didn't understand it. So I would always have to explain these concepts to him, and I had to put them in layman's terms so that, he understood what I was talking about. And that ended up helping out a lot with applications engineering, because I was able to, again, explain these concepts in layman's terms to people so that, that they were easily comprehensible. It was a cool job. Anyway, after, I think it was in 2017, I had been working with a company in the UK. By that point, I was a customer success engineer and was working with Briggs Automotive that make street legal Formula 3 racing cars. Essentially, it's a single seat, open wheel. They're technically covered, but it's an open wheel design, open cockpit. You're going to pull the little steering thing out. That wheel has to come out so that you can get in and then plug the wheel in. It is a single seat, 5-point harness race car. And I had been working with them since 2014, and they asked if I would be interested in working direct for them. So until January of 2020, when the COVID hit, I was traveling back and forth between Boston and Liverpool. Like every 5 weeks, I would be over there for 2, come back for 3, over there for 2, come back for 3. It was fun. And
did you ever get a chance to
right
go
when I had that
ride?
opportunity? I remember thinking, like, I'm 57 years old, and one thing I always missed when I left actually working like a real job, like you were saying earlier, the thing I always loved was going back into the shop and seeing something that I had worked on for a week, 2 weeks, a month. But I always had, because everything on your screen was always like this big. It was as big as the screen. So I remember my initial reaction was, I'd go back in the shop and see something that I was working on getting manufactured. And I always had one of two reactions. And it was, wow, that's a lot bigger than I thought it was. Or, wow, that's a lot smaller than I thought it was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so true. It's so true. I was designing like the cement mixer, on my 17-inch HP monitor. And, I actually see the thing come in and get shipped in. It looks like an M1A1 tank. It's like, it's incredible. It's like how that happens. It's so true.
For me, it was cranes. So the first couple of weeks at the crane company I worked at, I spent converting 2D drawings into 3D. And again, you look at it on the screen, you don't make much about it. And I went over to the shop to see one of these linkage arms, and it's 10 feet high and weighs, a ton.
It's amazing. It's amazing how that works. Maybe in the future that, with all the technology that we have now at PTC with, the AR, augmented reality type stuff, we're going to be able to experience more, upfront and not have that big shock.
Yeah.
When you actually see it for the first time, who knows, right? So
we're all still hoping for that Tony Stark moment, right?
Yes.
Exactly. It could happen. So it sounds like work is fun for you, but do any other fun things? I'm looking at your garage right now.
Well,
obviously, you're doing some fun things.
So the whole back of our house, we live in kind of backed up against the state forest, and the entire back of our house is glass. and
Yeah.
I'm on the ground floor. So all of the rooms on the ground floor have sliders to go in and out. So I ride out and ride in. So the
This
weather's
is like
nice.
Tony Stark's house.
What's that?
This is like Tony Stark's house.
Kind of, not that cool, but
But so tell us a little bit about what you're riding in and riding out on.
well, that is, I don't know how much of it you can see. I'm on a little rectangle.
I can see it. It's perfect. Yeah.
So that is a 2002 Ducati 748R. That was the last year of the Tamburini 916 series. So I think it was 1994 was the first Ducati 916. It's pretty revolutionary design, but it adhered to the ethos that Ducati had started with the trellis frame. As I was talking to Richard earlier, I was pointing out that, I mean, if you look at that thing, it's essentially like a motor with two wheels on it. And the chassis is the bare amount of material required to hold it all together as a motorcycle. I had no idea how rare that's the racing homologation bike. So if you were going racing in 2002, that's the bike you bought from Ducati. I think they were like 20 something thousand. They were heinously expensive. What I didn't know was that they only imported that last year. They only imported 15. 12 were sold to racing teams. 3 went to private owners. The racing bikes, they're all gone. They're in trash heaps somewhere. That is one of the 3 left from 2002. It took me almost 5 years to locate it because at the time, all I knew was, as an engineer, I knew I want a 750cc bike. I don't want 1,000. So I'm going to look for at the end of the production run because, you've done manufacturing before and you know that over a lifetime of whatever it is, you're going to refine and revise and it's going to get tweaked and a little better, a little better, a little better. So the last model year is typically what you want to get. Took me several years to find that thing. And when I did, there was a guy out in Washington State. I bought it sight unseen. He shipped it, and I knew just after the first couple of times talking to him, it was like he just was grilling me all these questions. What are your intentions with the bike? Like, what are you going to do with it? And it's like, geez, I'm just buying a motorcycle. I'm not marrying your daughter. Like, but when I got it, that's when I started looking into the history, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. So kind of like a curator at a museum. It's a very rare machine, which has its upside and downside. Downside being it takes finding parts for that thing is a nightmare. It's going on 20 years old and weren't a lot of them around when they were around. And so it takes a while.
It's amazing.
I'll bet though, with your engineering background and your access to certain tools, chances are you've made some modifications to the bike, or you can replace a part that maybe you can't find.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier, and if you want to see one, there we go. That is the license plate lamp, and so to sell these things to the public, they have to be street legal. To meet the requirements of that racing, the super bike, the bikes from the manufacturer are a version that's called a homologation version. So homologation means they're all made to this one specification, and essentially it is the race bike, but it's got street stuff on it. But the engine, for example, has a titanium crank, titanium valves. I mean, it's a heinously expensive machine. But then there's stuff on it that you need to have for being on the street, like headlights and turn signals and a mud guard that goes over the rear wheel that weighs 11.5 pounds because for stiffness, it has a molded in place steel. Can you guys see those little?
I can see the grommets
steel
there,
plate that's molded in place in the center of this thing, and it weighs a ton. So right away, I was like, there was the potential to get the weight on this thing down to about 385 pounds. But for the street, it was over 400. So I was like, well, I'm not going to, that's ridiculous. And they make for the race bike, they make a very thin, lightweight carbon fiber. It weighs literally about 1.5 pounds, the entire assembly here. So I fabricated this sheet metal bracket to hold my license plate and turn signals. The only thing missing was that I needed to be able to put the license plate lamp right there. And there was no provision on this anywhere for putting a license plate lamp. So I measured this thing. Nowadays I'd scan it, but this was back in 2013, I think, when I made this modification. So I just basically took the measurements and then we 3D printed the little bracket that fits literally right.
That's like what, an ABS bracket, like just used right out of the print, right?
Yeah. Actually, I was at Autodesk then, so we used NetFab to do infill. So it's not a solid print. It's hollow with like a matrix
of
latticing in there. And then the lamp basically attaches through that. But yeah,
it's beautiful.
In fact, Greg and I were talking about as soon as COVID is in our rear view, we can't wait to get back into Seaport on a regular basis because we have a wealth of CAM and coordinate measuring machines and 3D printers, and it's an engineer's playground in that place.
Totally is. It's really lucky having that. Yeah. Well, this is great. I mean, thank you for sharing, so much about, some interesting stories. I'm sure there's many more. I'm sure we could have you on about 100 times.
Do it.
And you'd have 100 different stories. So, really, once again, thank you so much for taking time out. What we're going to do next is actually talk about the improvements in the latest update. We'd love it if you hung around and maybe chatted a little bit about it if you had anything to add. About that. Does that sound good, Richard? Is that what we were doing on the schedule?
That's where we're at, Michael. Let's talk about 1.139.
It's a cool release.
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me get that ready. Gotta hit the switch here to switch my video over here, and we will share over here.
I know he's got a sweet setup, doesn't he?
Can't see the fireplace in this view, though.
Yeah, I can't see the fireplace, but you can see I'm actually doing CAD things. So I'm in here in the Onshape forums. We just had the release. What was it, Monday, Jay? I was really happy with some of these improvements. Here we have some frame stuff here just to kind of keep it on topic, I guess, by happenstance. But constant width fillet. So, obviously you can see here if we kind of look around, you can see the difference between a normal edge fillet and a
rolling ball. That's what happens. The problem is what we're doing there is welding. So for mass properties and for simulation, especially when you need that to be accurate, and that is not how that would be welded. Your weld would be of a constant width, so hence the change. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the thing that one of the users in the forums, I apologize, I don't have his name right now, but I think it was Evan Reese mentioned this. He's hopefully going to be a future podcast guest. He's got a lot of good stories. But you can see here the difference with the nice blend here. Because Onshape treats it as a edge fillet, setting the cross section as a width value, we can actually do all of the other kind of cool things.
Exactly.
With it, right? Blending it properly, C2 continuity and things like that. So it's a really nice approach, I think, was taken, in the design of this particular feature. It really is well thought out because of that. So anybody involved in surface design or anything like that is going to be really happy with that. Another thing for kind of the crowd involved with surface modeling or, consumer type product design is, setting the tangent edge display, on the 3D model, right? So when you're Part Studio and you want to you don't want to turn off all the edges because it kind of looks naked, and you don't want to have all the edges turned on because it kind of looks, a bit bold. You can have this nice kind of tangent effect. It's normal engineering way of showing things with a nice tangent line font and indicates the transition, right? So, simple little thing, but
you know where it looks
kind of like the way
really awesome is in hidden line mode. One of the things I always loved, I used to use Pro Engineer, and one of the things I loved about Pro Engineer was, not working in shaded mode, working in a hidden line mode. So it's all black and white. It's like if you've drawn an illustration, but having those edges turned on in hidden line mode. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's say shaded with, we'll do tangent edge phantom so we can see what that looks like. And then we can do shaded with hidden edges. And what else? Was that the one, or was there a
Go
different
to
one?
hidden edges removed.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. That's sweet. That looks like a technical publication, like an IKEA catalog kind of thing, right?
The bulk of my time spent in Pro Engineer was like this. I mean, it was, I just found it, I don't know, it was easier visually to assimilate everything that was in front of me while I was working. This was my primary use mode when I was working with that tool, and we can replicate it almost exactly now.
Yeah, that's a nice effect. And, another little known thing is if you go to the hamburger menu here and hit print, you don't have to actually print it. You can actually download an image, of this, just kind of put it in frame, and there you go. You have an image of that. And now we can just take a peek. It's probably popping up on another monitor here, and I'm on a Mac, so it's going to
Pulse Docs. I thought
weird.
that looked familiar. I thought it was a potato chip bag clip.
Well, you could use it for that. Really expensive potato bag clip, but yeah.
I had to use.
Actually, you can get these at CVS for $20 now.
Back in 2000, I climbed Denali in Alaska for my 40th birthday. I'd been ice climbing for years and years and years in the Northeast. And the guy who I climbed with, we were like, let's do a big mountain. So we went to Alaska and did Denali. And
well, that's as big as it gets here.
I rocked it the whole month. I didn't have a single problem with my metabolizing oxygen until summit morning. Like, we got up and we woke up that morning thinking we were going to have to leave because the weather was just heinous the entire week we were at high camp. And we wake up this morning and we were like, holy cow, we actually could make a summit push today. So we start packing our bags, and last thing we did was, check our pulse ox, and I put that thing on, and like, I had been in the high 70s, low 80s almost the entire month. I put it on that morning and it started off at like 63%. And I'm watching it. It's like 62, 61, 60. I yanked it at 59. I was like, I don't want to watch it anymore. But I went anyway because I felt fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm no doctor, but it's, you made it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. All right.
What's the next feature?
What do we got next? Oh, this one, I actually did this I did a webinar just before the session that we're recording right now. And this was my first opportunity to show this off, was general tasks and action items. And it was, I love this. This is like for me, I'm like an organization person, and I enjoy PDM and PLM and new ways of kind of keeping yourself under wraps and under control, and your team under control. Not control in a bad way, like cracking the whip or anything, but like, what the heck is going on, and what's the status of things, and how do I dole out work for people to do work with, right? So, this was just, well, I'll just show it live just a little bit. I mean, it's really amazing.
And it's core functionality. That's the thing that like blows me away about this stuff is that, this is all core functionality, all of that, all of those tools that with other products just, it's an add-in. It's something that like a reseller, it has to be customized. It's amazing, right? Like how much of this type of administrative tools are in the product. Just core.
Yeah, the action items page, which is available for enterprise and professional users. And professional, it's found underneath the menu here. I can't remember if it's under my pull down here or here, but we'll look for it. And on the enterprise, it's just a big kind of tab at the top. But the action item center, and has been around for quite some time now.
Right.
The ability to kind of like create tasks inside of a document, relating it to a certain thing, assigning it to a certain user. Same thing with release packages. I can see I'm looking for releases here that are created by me, and I can kind of get a nice report and list as to what was going on with it. But new for this release, this is really exciting. This kind of puts Onshape another level up in how to do data management, I believe. So you're able to create a task outside of a document, right? So you don't even have to have an Onshape related object anymore, right? So let's say you had an engineering change request. I like actually putting numbers on things, and the description is need more material on this part. And what part is it? Well, it's I can go over here and choose a reference, and I can just I can browse, or I could filter out different things. I'm looking for a part from a supplier, and the supplier is Bueller Motor Company or something. I'll pick assembly too. Right. And, I'm getting my search right here, and it's going to search through my system. I can associate different things with it. Or I can just kind of pick it, from, a normal kind of, browsing, experience, right? Oh, click that again. There we are. So I'll just go to my recently opened here to the pulse oximeter, and I'm going to say this part needs to have some change affected, right? And it's not going to be assigned to me. I'm, have Debbie do it, right?
Debbie designer.
There she is, and there's her initials right there. You can even set, priority on it. It's a high priority. We really need to get this done yesterday. No, I'm just kidding. Friday. And, of course, this completed date will update as the task is accomplished, right? So, I can assign that right from here. And then Debbie, I think I closed her window, so never mind. I'll just kind of show this as Mike the manager. I'm going to say created by me, general type of task, and I can kind of keep tabs on that particular task, see if she's gone in and done that. I can, look at this right here at the top of my screen. That's a URL. I could bookmark that, right? And, save it as a bookmark and have a report that I look at over coffee every morning, what's going on in my company. This is really good stuff. I mean, this really helps people. It's not, CAD stuff. It's the process, right?
So, I mean, it's part of the job.
Right. I mean, Post-it notes and emails. That's how people are doing this. Some people will buy a fancy project management system, to do this. The good thing is, a lot of these things are, if you have like Atlassian products or Slack or anything, you can take a link and put a link to something too. It's not like you can't use those tools. In fact, it's very much complementary to those tools because, you're using a SaaS cloud native system. You have URLs. Drawing stuff. Everybody loves Richard. Every podcast that we do, if there's a drawings update, you're really happy.
I get all excited about these, and you're about to scroll to my favorite one, so looking forward to that.
Yeah. So, this one, this one was kind of a stickler for me. I really like the way the center lines are supposed to look on a drawing. Like I loved creating a drawing and making sure the center line looked exactly the way I want. I don't know why, if it was like something, psychologically wrong with me, but, but now, there's much more control over how those look. So just check those out in the little tab on the side. And, when you have a drawing, this one was like major though, the aligned section view for any kind of revolved parts, right? If you have a part you turn on a lathe and you do a section view of it, right? And, the section needs to kind of come out in a radial polar kind of fashion. You need this type of aligned section view to have a proper looking section view, right? So if I just go full screen here and play this just a little bit, you can see how it works. Very easy. Just kind of pick a point in the center, and then you pick your beginning and end point. It just highlights it automatically, and then it gives you a quick preview. You can flip the direction. As soon as you place it, you're going to see the section view, and the cut will revolve up, right? And this is like old school drafting. You would do this, of course.
Yep.
But this couldn't be an easier way of doing it. You see, it respects the tapped hole here. You still see the section, the indication of a tapped hole in here, and it just works easy, right? It's a really easy way of doing it. Was that your favorite, Richard?
It was old school drafting, and it's still done the same way.
Some improvements for enterprise users. Enterprise companies typically have extremely large numbers of users, right? So the ability to add and remove users very quickly. Let's say you have a joint venture with another company and they're invited in your enterprise, and you want to, do stuff with the user list and everything. You can actually download the user list to a CSV file, and it's helpful for doing single sign-on systems and other things. So it's a nice kind of administrative option to have. And new user permissions are available now in enterprise for managing workflows. So you could do this before, but now it's a much more granular setting. Who can actually manage the creation and editing of workflows in your system as an enterprise? You can have you don't have to be like one single level administrator. You don't have to be a god level administrator. You can be somebody that's part of this group, right? To manage workflows. And furthermore, on workflows, there's a nice little debug mode that will help you kind of figure out what's going on, while you're building out your workflows, which are done entirely in Onshape in a JSON type format, very easy to read format to build your workflows. Really a nice way of making sure that things are updating the way you want. The nice thing about Onshape workflows, if you haven't played with them before, is that you don't have to if you're editing a workflow, you don't have to worry about breaking the workflow for anybody else, right? You're doing a workflow in a live workspace, just like any other thing in Onshape. You're doing your work in a workspace, but if you have released items or versions, right, those things are never going to change, right? The same is true with the workflows. Everything in a workflow is set as a named kind of published stable thing. And as you're tinkering, you don't have to worry about breaking anything that's in process, right? So I know some companies will go through and have entire sandbox environments, for testing out workflows and things. And that's a whole nother set of administration and installation and management that a CAD admin has to go through. Just something you don't have to worry about in Onshape. And furthermore, this is a big workflow update. You can actually edit the custom workflow to create custom properties of any kind of thing you want, that will happen during the workflow transition process, right? So as you're going from pending to released, you might have it, put in the design checker as a property. You might have it put in certain other custom properties that make sense for your organization at that same moment, right? I think it's the way it should have been done the whole time, right? It's it's very easy to do. Some more stuff in the Learning Center for localization. So English, German, and French, and of course we have the comments here from all the Onshape users out there. It's
That's actually one of my favorite things to do with each release, is to go through and see how people react to the release, react to the changes. And it's fun to see the comments. I saw what I see today. Great improvements. Constant width fill is nice. Great release. So we're getting some good comments, and we're keeping our customers happy.
Yeah. So I was really excited and happy to do the recording so close to the actual update, so we can everybody will still have this fresh on their mind when you're listening to this.
Yep.
So I'm really excited about that. Richard, Jay, thanks for adding your contribution to that as well. It's always good to hear somebody that's part of that process commenting on it. So
My pleasure.
This should be
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Richard, what are we wrapping up with today?
Well, we've got a couple of things left here. We want to take a quick look at our model of the week. And we'll finish that up with some user group news, special meeting coming up on December 2nd. So our model of the week this week is Thanksgiving themed. It's a little quirky, and it's my model. So I need to start with a backstory. So Thanksgiving is absolutely my favorite holiday of the year. I love to cook. I love to eat. But, the best thing about Thanksgiving, besides all the love and family and all that stuff, are the leftover turkey sandwiches. And let me tell you how a leftover turkey sandwich should be made. Plain white bread, mayonnaise, turkey, and jellied cranberry sauce. And I know, I'm sure we have a lot of listeners that live on the East Coast. I know all about the cranberry bogs. I know all about fresh cranberries, but I'm telling you, the jellied stuff makes a better sandwich. Now, one of the problems that I've run into is I can never seem to get the exact slice that I want, even with the striations on the can. And you can take a look here at my my replication here of some jellied cranberry sauce.
I knew it.
Let's reload this here.
This is amazing.
And so you can see and those are the striations that come with the can, when you plop this thing out onto the platter. But even so, using a knife to do this, I often end up going off in a different direction. I don't get perfect slices every time. So what I thought I'd do was use Onshape and kind of ideate some ideas. How can I get a better slice of cranberry sauce? So this was one of the designs that I came up with. And so right now it's a very manual process. You can see the handles on each side. But I do plan to continue working on this and automate it somehow. The up and down the cutting motion, quite possibly automate a way to move those slices onto a platter. But for right now, this is what I've got, and this will make perfect slices of cranberry sauce.
That's great.
And that is our model of the week.
All right, and we're going to make that a public document, right? So people can
yes.
go to their 3D printer and make their own in time for the holiday.
Exactly. And I would encourage folks to go ahead and make a copy of that and let's see, show me what you can do with it. Let's see some automation there. Let's see some better engineering. I threw that together pretty quick, but I like it. And and if any of our listeners want to offer up some 3D printing services, I'd be happy to send those files to them and let them make this for me. So that's our model of the week for this week.
Best things in sliced bread.
You betcha. So moving quickly now to user group news. We've got a special education user group meeting coming up on December 2nd. It'll be hosted by Caroline Koenig. She's one of our user group advisory board members. She's an instructor at Memorial University in Newfoundland. And she was also PTC's University Educator of the Year for 2020. There's a great story on the website. You can read all about Caroline. So Caroline and I were talking about topics for this meeting that she wanted to put together. And she mentioned that her students, while they're very good with Onshape, they use Onshape in the course of their work. A typical design process, and not just students, just about any design process, usually starts with some thoughts in the head, maybe some sketches on paper, and then you move to CAD and start doing some layouts. After they get to the point where they're sketching on paper and they've got their sketch or their design kind of laid out there, they often ask the next question is, where do I start? Which plane do I use? Which direction do I extrude? And it's not just students that ask that question. A lot of professionals that have that question too. So we have enlisted our own Nacho Martos, one of the most energetic people that I've ever met, to do a special presentation called basically best practices on where to start stuff. Now, we expect that most of Caroline's students will be attending this meeting. In fact, we've got a little contest to make sure that they do. But I just want to mention that this meeting is open to everybody, and it's going to be a good session on best practices. If you've ever seen Nacho present, he always brings it. And it should be a great meeting. So we'll put the link to the user group pages in the comments, and of course, you can always navigate to them yourself and click on the calendar link, and you'll find more information and registration for that meeting. So I hope you all join us. It should be a great presentation. and you get to meet Caroline and her students as well. So looking forward to that.
Excellent. Well, I guess that's that, huh?
I guess that's pretty much it. Jay, thanks again. Michael, I just real quick, let me go ahead and mention what we've got coming up next time. As of this posting, our tiny house project user group meeting will have happened a couple of nights ago. So we'll have a recap, probably show some of the designs that came in on that little project. We've got an interview with Greg Brown, and I'm hoping he'll talk a little bit about the BattleBots Team Ghost Raptor that Onshape is sponsoring for this year's BattleBots. Really good stuff there. And our model of the week, we'll actually have a very interesting model of the week, but even better, we're going to have a special guest appearance by the person that created that model. So really looking forward to the next podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget, like, subscribe, do all that stuff to help us get this word out there.